So let's pick up where we left off. Now, you and Julian both worked in the communications, publishing the magazine at Morehouse.
Right.
What was your relationship to that magazine, and what was Julian's relationship to that magazine?
Well, the literary magazine, it was for the writers club or the future writers at Morehouse. We were juniors and seniors at the time, and so I was editor of the Pegasus. That was the name of the magazine, the Pegasus, and Julian was my associate editor. And in that magazine, we wrote poems and other literary things, but we were both English majors. So we took our classes, a number of them, over to Spelman on the advanced level, so that we would always get, the young ladies would always be reminding us of our assignments and so forth and so on. Julian was into the jazz kind of things, the poems that dealt with jazz and things that were going on in the popular vein, and I was the more serious one, the deeper one, so to speak, the more pessimistic one, I guess.
Not so much pessimistic, but Alice Walker wrote a poem about
Yes.
Julian. I think you've probably read it.
Yeah.
And it was that she was the first time she sang "We Shall
Overcome.
Overcome." Was there an earnestness to him that belied his intelligence, or did he know how to read people even at that young age?
I don't know. I've tried to reflect on a number of things since Julian's death, and there's been a lot of, talk about his life for people who didn't know enough about him, and a lot of the stories out of the '60s and '70s. I mean, those times, kids today don't really know. The young people don't know. So I've had to sort of regroup and go back, and I've tried to think. Because I guess we were never thinking of ourselves in the way that people think of him in later years. But during the college time, it was a crusade and it was an adventure. So he was like me. He was like Ben Brown, our close buddy, who died, and who later went with the Carter administration. I don't know if he had I can't say he had any more insight into people than that. I mean, we were all about others. Now, I was raised totally in my background, it's never about you, and it's always about others. And as a minister now, but we had always been taught that the greatest question in life, and Dr. King Jr. used to always say this often, that the greatest question and answer in life is not so much about what you did for you or what you received, but Jesus answered, what did you do for others? And that's where we all were. It wasn't about us. Because if it had just been us, we would have been taking that risk just for ourselves, because it wouldn't have been in concert with anybody else,
Go ahead and change up my shot. I'm gonna get something tied. When you talk about Julian, quote unquote, leading the movement, Lonnie King, quote unquote, leading the movement, was that really what you guys were thinking back then? And remember, you never hear the sound of my voice.
I think at the beginning of the movement, there was the normal youthful excitement. At first, now you're thinking about the original people here. We had that Morehouse maze in us. We had the King concept, the Negro contribution to the world kind of thing, and so it meant that it wasn't so much about you wanting to put your neck on the line and get out in the front, but it was about doing something in concert with others, for others. It wasn't just a single thing. I, for one, spent my whole life trying to make sure that I was not singling myself out over anyone else, and that has not always been positive in terms of me. But but you also learn that everybody who walks in the water everybody does not come out with wet feet, so to speak.
Okay, I'm right over my head.
Oh, I'm
Explain
sorry.
it to me. Okay.
Well, I mean, all of us who walk along the same path do not carry the same thoughts.
Okay. What has changed among movement people? Oh, before I get to that.
Okay.
Can you name the original people from the original meetings?
Well, see, and that's the original meeting is an anomaly in a sense, because the original thought was just coming from Yates and Milton. Just like that, Julian and I remember Julian Joseph Pierce and Lonnie King, and mostly Lonnie, who came up, and I was standing on the campus, standing more. I'd already been in Yates and Milton, come out, and we always sat around little groups and I stood on the corner afterwards, and and they came up and I was standing up there near the chemistry building. And they walked up and they started talking about it. And I said, yeah, well, we need to try to we're going to try to organize to do something about that. And my word was, for blind, you need to be included. And this goes back, I guess, historically to our rearing. Lonnie King grew up in Ebenezer, also Ebenezer Church, Baptist Church. Also, he was 2 years ahead of me. His mother and my mother were friends, were close friends. We've just sort of known each other all the time. But after that, I mean, he never had the same relationship in depth with family that I did. But I don't know if I'm getting away from what I was.
No, I'm just saying that the original people. You need to go one of your nose? Okay. Okay, right here? Okay, great.
Okay. Well, in the original people, that was all I could think of right that particular time, because I know we carried on conversation. But when we got together later, I can't remember exactly who was. I know when they first brought women in, and I can't remember exactly the way they came. I know the ones later came as the student body presidents and this kind of things when they involved others. But there were no women involved right at the very beginning.
Was that traditional back then?
No, I just think it came out of the conversations. And we would not be sitting down there talking about a lot of these things with some of the women who came down from campus, but you see, most of the women who came down, the campus women did not come down and sit in the drugstore because, see, they were on the campus. So that now some of the women from Clark did, because they just came right off and came right down the corner. But Spelman, some did, but we didn't always sit around and talk politics with them.
That wasn't the purpose.
There wasn't.
Okay, yeah, I'll keep looking. Okay, so the other question that I have to ask you then, when you have a memory of Julian Bond,
Okay.
what words come to mind? And use complete sentences on that.
Background. Julian's background set him apart from me, and a lot of those who went to Morehouse in the mid 1950s, 56, 55. 56, I understand at that time, was the largest conglomerate of city students, non-campus students, that the college had reached out to. And so we did not eat our meals in the dining room, anything like that. We didn't have, that was if you lived on campus, you did. You went to the Robert Hall dining room. But the rest of us would go down on the corner. We had the rec where you could go in and maybe get a little quick food or something. But basically, we went down to the corner. And so Julian, when I first met Julian and J.T. Stevens and 2 or 3 other people, they used to sort of hang together. But in those days, there was a lot of class consciousness. Julian's father was Dr. Horace Mann Bond of Atlanta University, been a college president, Lincoln, this kind of thing. And so that immediately set us above these non-campus students, city students
I get it.
who came in. And Julian and I got to be friends basically through our department. We were both English majors.
Okay, I'm gonna have you hold that. John, come on back in. Okay, no problem.
But you know, the class consciousness was a big thing.
Seniors, juniors, that.
No, socially.
Okay, say that again. I want a tighter stop on that.
Okay.
The
Ask me.
class consciousness, now when I say class, you're not talking what grade you're in. You're talking what
I'm
socioeconomic.
talking about social class, your economic class. A number of us came from the public housing projects. Julian came, as did some other of our classmates. They came from the upper echelon of our social, in terms of our social conditions. And I remember when the first time Julian was coming over to my house for something, and we lived in the public housing project, Greater Homes Public Housing Project. And so he was coming to pick me up for something. And my grandma said, you're not going to bring him here. You're not going to bring, and it was, this was rampant. You know, Atlanta at that time was high social class place, you know. I was from Fourth Ward. And there was a difference in our class. I call it our own apartheid.
Was it also color scheme oriented?
Oh, yes. You mean, was it ever not?
Well, yeah, I was told I would never get into Spelman because I was too dark.
Of course.
Yeah.
But darkness was more than skin.
I don't understand.
It was a class. In my later years, well, in our time, the more, well, Friendship Baptist Church, First Congregational Church downtown, those were the more elite people of our community. And invariably, except for a few of them, they all lived on the, quote, west side.
Now, what were the streets? What area is West Side now?
Well, it used to be Hunter Street, Martin Luther King Jr. off of Hunter Street, Burbank Drive, Mosley Drive, where people, they had homes, they built their homes. My wife's family, they had lived in the project too, but they lived in the project on the west side. But they built a home on Burbank Drive, the highest house on the hill, but they were the. It's kind of hard to talk about some of this stuff, but truth is hard to swallow sometimes. And I'll show you something later,
Okay.
and you'll understand.
But continue the whole.
Well, that was that. What Julian, Julian didn't pay that any attention that much, you know. So we got together because of our commonalities and what we were learning, our purpose of being at Morehouse, and see the part about the civil rights end of it came later. You know, it came in more our junior senior. I got to know Julian when I was a sophomore, and he was a freshman at the time. You know, but it was due to our interaction in terms of our coming together in terms of what our fields of study were.
If you had to do one summary sentence about Julian Bond, who he was when you knew him and who the world remembers, how would you do one sentence to sum that up?
Creative.
Yeah, we'll wait till the.
Okay.
And then say one sentence, one, you said.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Hold on.
He is not gonna stop.
That's the police.
Sometimes that's the escort in the prison van.
Oh, okay.
Prison building,
Right.
courthouse is right here.
Oh, really?
So they do that and they put them under the garage and then they close
Okay.
the garage and then they,
Oh, thank you. I didn't know what that was.
Okay. I'm
Yeah, we
sorry.
really have to wait for this squealing to
Okay.
stop.
If I had to sum Julian up, and the first word that would come to my mind, because of the way our relationship began, would be creative. We used to, we were into the writing thing, you know, the poems, the poetry. He more mod, I was more traditional. And it sort of evolved from that. And we would take classes similar, and Julian was highly creative, and he had an air about him that you would not have found in the ghetto. It was nurtured in other circumstances, and even down to the last time we were together in March. I think it was March. Yeah, March. And he talked about. We were talking. We embraced each other as usual, and the time prior to that, John, a congressman, John Lewis was there too. At church the same Sunday. So the three of us went back and sat and talked and laughed, and so our pastor came back to his study. That was before we completed the King Senior Building, which is adjoining the church now. And so the pastor's study was right behind the pulpit area. And so he came into his office around there, and he saw us laughing and talking. And he looked at me as though he was shocked to see me there with Julian Bond and Congressman Lewis. And so he looked, so Julian said, yeah, this is the way it's always been. I thought that was significant, you know. The last time he came, he would always come bringing some students from the University of Virginia. And I had been their guest at one point at the University of Virginia for a large King event. But at any rate, he just, we always greet each other. We talked about what's been going on. And I met his current wife for maybe about the third time, but not, and we didn't have to spend the time just to know this is my wife, so and so and so forth. And I also knew Alice. I think I told you that. That was when Alice grew up in the projects with us, and when she went to college, Julian met her over there, and she and my brother Marvin were in the same homeroom at David T. Howard High School, which does not exist anymore. Vernon Jordan told me.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, that's all right.
Again.
Just get that out real quick. I don't know why.
Okay. It's got you an analogy going.
Vernon Jordan